welcome to our podcast all about multimedia. My name is Michael Peters, and I'm not a teacher yet, but I'm a master's student, and I work at a local television station, so I'm used to working with video, and this is my first real podcast.
Hi, this is Yanru. I'm currently a full-time student. Before I was in preschool to teach Chinese. And actually, this is my second time to do podcast, but the first time I just do by myself, a very simple one. Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing a podcast with me.
Thank you.
So first off, I wanted to ask what you think, and for our viewers out there who might not know, what exactly is multimedia?
So for my understanding, I think multimedia just combine multiple media formats such as text, images, videos, and audio. And I think PowerPoint is a very good example can be represented.
Yeah. So from my understanding of the reading, the basic principle behind multimedia is any presentation that combines text and graphics. And it's important, I want our listeners out there to realize that text can also mean spoken word. So not just printed word, but anything that is spoken as well. So this podcast, you can consider text. Somebody could transcribe it and it could be, written text. So multimedia can be really simple, or it can get really complex as we build on it. You can add music, videos, graphics, all that good stuff, like motion graphics, animations. What do you think the relationship between multimedia and learning is?
I think multimedia can support our teacher to introduce something for our student, but actually I'm not use a lot of multimedia. I just use very simple thing like the images or the video. Actually, the PowerPoint I'm not use a lot. Just sometimes if I need it, and I will use it.
I really enjoyed reading the Clark and Meyer reading. And my biggest takeaway from it was that multimedia can promote active learning. So like, long story short, I guess it's students engaging in such a way that stimulates like different parts of the brain, which promotes interaction, which could keep the students invested. It really helps when you're invested in what you're learning. So again, I think it's important to stress that when multimedia is used correctly, because it can be used incorrectly, when it's used correctly, it really does promote active learning and keeps students engaged.
Yes, I agree with that. So in my classroom, sometimes I use the multimedia to support their learning, but I'm not very sure about it if those kind of multimedia will disturb their attention, or they say it's really helpful for them because my students are very young. I'm working with like preschool students, so I'm usually not give a lot of like technology for them. For the multimedia, I usually like use the images or the video, and I play it for them, or I hold the image for them. And it kind of very helpful to help the student to engage it because I'm teaching Chinese and they can know, oh, this word means the apple, or oh, this word means peach. So it's very helpful for me to teach Chinese in my class. So yeah, it has helped the student to engage more because some of them do not understand what I'm talking about. When they see the picture, they will gotcha and okay, I know what you're talking about, Miss Chen.
Right. That makes total sense. Like they need that picture as reference because they know what an apple is when they look at it, but they're not going to know the Chinese word for it until they can put those two together.
Yes.
That's really interesting. And when you said you teach kids, how old are they?
Like my previous job, teach 4 years old children.
4 years old, and you're teaching. These kids. They speak English first, and then they're learning Chinese.
Yes, but depends on the family. Some students have the language foundation, but some of them didn't have.
Wow. That's pretty incredible that they're learning at such a young age, like another language, when they're still trying to master their first language.
But you know what? The young kids learn new language very fast.
Wow.
Very fast.
Yeah, I guess so because they don't have a lot of other stuff in their brain already about like language. They haven't built up any like barriers to that yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Because sometimes I'm very worried about like, because some kids have the language foundation, but some didn't have. So I don't want only the kids know what this word mean engage in my classroom. I want all the students engage it.
So not all the kids can put in the same level of engagement at.
Yeah.
But does the multimedia help that? Bring them back in?
Yes, yes. And also the music very helpful too.
Oh yeah. How
Yeah.
is the music helpful?
Well, I will talk about that
You're gonna
later.
talk about okay. We're gonna talk about that later. So is there any risk that maybe there's too much going on? That too many pictures maybe they get off topic.
Actually, not really, because very simple picture, not like anime's very fancy picture. Like if I teach apple, just an apple and nothing else, just an apple, very simple.
So yeah, that sounds really interesting. In terms of the multimedia principle, it sounds like your tools you're using are really effective to promote learning. A picture of an apple with a title that says Apple is an example of a representational graphic. It doesn't clutter the page. It doesn't clutter the mind too much. It's very simple. Picture of an apple, title that says Apple. Because as we learned from the second reading, too much on the page can actually be a distraction and actually be detrimental to learning. They call it the coherence principle. And the coherence principle is they're stressing keep your lessons uncluttered with information that's not relevant. So don't add any extra images or text or sounds that might be distracting. Even though some people think, the younger generation kind of needs to be completely entertained to be engaged. It's not actually the truth. Even if they're totally engaged, it might not help their learning. So, what do you think of this coherence principle or the less is more idea?
Yeah, yeah, I very like this idea, and I agree with this idea with my two hands. And this is I also use this in my classroom, like for the very young kids, and also it's like for myself, I really like it too. Like English is my second language, so when I saw a large piece of English in front of me, I was very headache, and I refused to read it. For example, when I go to a lecture, if the speaker's PowerPoint use a lot of words without any picture, I won't read it. And it doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the content. It just takes me a longer time to read than the native speaker. Every time when I still read it, but the speaker will move on to the next slide or next topic. And I need to spend time to keep up. So if the picture can instead of a lot of words, I feel very good because the picture for me is more direct and I can read very easily. Mm, yeah, before I knew the concept of less is more, I just thought about I don't like to read words and wanted to see picture, just make an excuse for myself. Well, this is maybe an excuse, but I'm
No,
glad to know.
no, it makes perfect sense. I'm so glad that you can see that now. That it's not an excuse. It's actually a real thing. People have a hard time with a lot of text on the screen, and the Tufts reading about PowerPoint itself is a whole beast that we can talk about a little, but it's not a great learning tool. As we read, yeah, if there's too much on the screen, it could be super overwhelming. Especially with language. I can see how that can be really too
Yeah.
much. Where the picture might be enough, and having all this extra words on the side, if it's not pivotal, if it can't be like presented from the educator, like through speaking, maybe it's better off without it. Yeah. So I wanted to talk really quick about one of the more interesting things about multimedia that I got from the readings. So um, one of the things that stood out to me was that the people who benefit most from the multimedia principle are novices or people who are brand new to the field. And that the use of images and multimedia really helps their learning. But people who come in with some prior understanding or experts, that they don't really benefit from having the addition of the images. They don't like, it doesn't damage their learning process to have them, but it doesn't really help them. And I thought that was super interesting about how the use of multimedia can help a novice kind of start to picture those things in their mind's eye because they've never experienced it before. Do your students have benefit from that? Being like brand new to learning language and brand new to a lot of things because they're so young.
Yeah, yeah. And just like I said before, I use very simple picture to help the student learn the words, something. And also the body language is very important. But body language is not for the multimedia anyway.
I
So
but maybe it is, right? It's a visual. I know it's like person to person, but it's still the words with a person's body language is kind of the words with the visual. So maybe it is
oh,
multimedia.
oh, good
Don't
point.
you think? I mean, is so if you think about words as text and the body language as the image, then the two hand in hand help you learn language.
Yes, I
That's pretty
agree with
awesome.
you. Yeah,
That's
great.
awesome. I'm glad we figured that out. Um, I wanted to talk about a reading. You are in a class with me, technology and instructional design, correct?
Yes.
We did a reading, Donovan and Bransford, How Students Learn, and they illustrated in their introductory chapter several points about learning, and they used a children's book called Fish is Fish. And I'm just going to fill our listeners in on what that story is about.
I really like that story.
It's a really good story.
Yeah, very good.
So, Fish is Fish is a story about a fish who lives in a pond. And since he's a fish, he can't go onto land and see the outside world. And he's super curious. He's got a super curious mind. And he asks his friend the frog, who can live in the pond and out on land, he asks his friend the frog what life is like outside of the pond. And the frog tells the fish all about birds and cows and humans and all these great things that are out there on the land. And the fish starts to visualize what the frog is telling of the outside world. Only the fish can only think in terms of what it knows. So the fish can, when hearing the description of the bird, pictures a fish with wings. And when the frog describes a cow, the fish pictures, the black and white spots and the four legs, but on a fish's body. So I thought I was curious, like, how could the frog be a more effective teacher using multimedia?
Well, very easy. Just show the picture, just like what I did in my Chinese class.
Yeah. I mean, it seems simple, right? If the frog was able to pair the text or the spoken word with a picture of what the frog was talking about, the fish would be able to picture, a little bit better what was going on in the outside world. So, as a novice, the fish would have learned way better with the use of multimedia. Just a simple picture along with what the frog was describing.
Yes, just like the article said, just use very simple way to let the beginner to learn the new things. This is the effective way for them to learn it. But how about for the frog? If the frog wants to learn, what kind of way we can help those learners with some experience?
talk to the cow. find out
Oh,
find out how the cow sounds. So now we have the visuals and the sound going hand in hand.
very good. I like that answer. And I just think about if we come back to the classroom, if one the broad kind of students want to learn with the multimedia, I just think about it. Should we need to put more detailed photo, picture for them?
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I guess that goes with the coherence principle, right? If the novice is given too much information right at the start, then they won't be able to retain it.
We need to do some adjust based on our students' situation.
And you talked a little bit about it, but how do you use multimedia in the classroom setting?
Well, like I talk about I use music in my classroom.
That's right.
So yes, so music is very, very, very important part when I teach Chinese. So every time I play music almost every day. Like before I start the class, I just play the music and the kids just follow the music to sing a song or they dance something. It's kind of a way for them to do the movement because my kids are very young. They need to express their energies. And
Yeah.
then so music, yeah, it's very good way for them to do some movements and then they can pay attention later. And also the music is very catchy. So they will all know the melodies and also when the lyrics and the pic images put together. So all the students with language foundation or without language foundation, they all can understand what this music singing about. This video is talking about the fruits. Oh, this is apple. This is banana. They all can get that. And every time they just like very, very interesting thing. Like before I have a song about the number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but in Chinese it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Yeah,
Okay.
and then every time I ask the students, how do you say number 5 in Chinese? They just like have to sing the song from 1 to 5 and then tell me number 5 is 5.
Wow. That's great. That that makes a lot of sense. I still sometimes sing the ABCs if I want to know what order the letters go in.
Oh yeah, I did that too. I think only me did that.
Oh no, yeah, if somebody wants to know, I got to go through the whole thing like really quick in my head sometimes because that makes total sense. It really helps. I think it triggers like a different part of the brain. And you said dancing too, which is really interesting.
Yes, yes. So, and this is not like the mission for them. Like you have to do this. I just do very freely. Like if you want to sing, you just sing. If you want to dance, you just dance. I not require them. You have to sing the song and dance. Just do whatever you want to do. Just feel comfortable in this environment. That's good.
That's really interesting too, because
Yeah.
then it's up to them. Then
Yeah.
they make the choice to engage.
Yes, yes. And also because I play the music, the background music, you cannot ignore them.
Yeah,
Especially most of them are dancing and singing. So even they just sit there, but the music is still in their mind.
that's really cool. Well, thank you for sharing how you use multimedia in your classroom. I'm really glad that I got to do this podcast with somebody who's currently teaching, and it sounds like you use multimedia super effectively. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you too. Like we're in totally different area to work and very glad to know your working area, how's going and you bring out a lot of like good idea. I really like the body language is a kind of multimedia. I really like that point.
Yeah, I hope you can now picture that as you move on and keep that in mind when you're teaching.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and thanks for guys listening our podcast.
Yes, thank you everybody out there in the podcast land for listening. So again, my name's Mike,
My name is Yanru.
and until next time,